we're here to talk to you about some of the issues and nuances with Microsoft licensing and also explore the Velosio One licensing incentive program. I'm a solution architect here at Velosio and look forward to co-presenting with Amy.
So as I said, Amy Mackay, account management. Bert and I had the opportunity to present last year. So we're excited to kind of move forward on some things, some new things in licensing and a brand new program that we've come out with that I'm super, super excited about. So Bert, I'll kind of hand it over to you to talk about some of the licensing stuff first.
Yeah, here we are talking about Microsoft NCE, the new commerce experience. And as I was looking over the slide and kind of putting it together, I got to thinking, Amy, it's like it's a year old now, right? I mean, it's not new anymore. It's been around for a year or more than that. So it's really exciting to see it continue to grow and see a lot of organizations taking advantage of the Microsoft program and the licensing. For those of you who may not be really familiar with it, the new commerce or NCE experience, as Microsoft calls it, is really the vehicle to sell Microsoft D365 for Dynamics, and then Microsoft 365 and Office 365 for the office productivity piece, as well as Windows 365 and the Power Platform. So those are all the places, the licenses that you'll see within the NCE program. And it's a great tool and a great program for small and medium-sized or SMB businesses that do not meet the minimum requirements for a true Microsoft Enterprise Agreement type of purchasing vehicle. And we'll talk a little bit later in the session today about Microsoft Enterprise Agreements. The other benefit of CSP, Cloud Solution Provider, and the NCE program within Microsoft is the ability to get support services directly from a partner, directly from Velosio. And that's really great because there's a lot of different advantages to taking support directly from a partner, but most notably, it's going to be a much faster support response time from Velosio than with Microsoft Direct. So it's great because it gives you different options, and we have many different options for support that we can give you additional information on as well.
And just to add, Bert, and I know we had this question a lot last year, is because it kind of, it kind of locks you into some different commitments with Microsoft and payments. And this NCE change was Microsoft. A lot of people are like, oh, Velosio did this change, or some of the partners did the change. But actually, Microsoft kind of forced this whole new NCE, which is basically an annual commitment on your licensing. There's different payment options you can do, which is, we offer and we kind of have here is the annual commitment. And you can pay monthly, pay those licenses monthly. You can do an annual commit, you pay those annual, or you can do kind of a hybrid solution. And maybe if you've got a seasonal business, you could do, 20 licenses at a hybrid, and then you've got a commitment on the rest of your licenses, and that's at a 20% premium.
Yeah, let me just mention real quick that the hybrid's really great because organizations, there's no perfect solution or a perfect fit for an organization. So whenever we, consult on this, we always like to encourage a hybrid because it makes sense that, hey, for the long-term employees that you're going to have for very little turnover, you'll be better off to go with an annual commit. But if you do have some of that, turnover, seasonal type of work and jobs, then you can actually go on a month to month, which gives you that flexibility. So it's really the best of both worlds in that scenario.
Perfect. I think we covered NCE. That was, kind of let elaborate on that for this year. So another big question we always have, Bert, I know the account management team gets this quite a bit, is what's the difference between Office 365 or O365 and Microsoft 365 or M365?
Yeah, sometimes we use the terms interchangeably, but there is a distinct difference. So Office 365 is what traditionally is referred to as Office. Think of it as the old Microsoft Office productivity suite. And the emphasis there is on productivity because it's going to include the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, the old typical trusted apps that Microsoft included with the Microsoft Office suite. With Microsoft 365, they continue that productivity suite, but what they've added is some great tools for the small to medium-sized businesses, okay? So really what's going to happen is you're going to get that traditional bundle, but you're now going to get two special products, okay? Windows 10 and 11 licensing, and the enterprise mobility or the EMS tools. And that's really great because when you start thinking about it from a security standpoint, M365 is going to be a much better fit because you're going to get all the security tools in by the license natively, whereas you'd have to do an a la carte add-on for the Office 365. And so with all the threats of malware and ransomware and all the other things that we see today, it's very important to have a very strong security posture. And the EMS suite really does much to help reduce the overall risks that your end users are going to be facing. So when you think about what's included in the SMS or the uh, EMS mobility suite, you're really thinking about additional tools to protect you against malware and ransomware and accidental leaks, tools to help you control and restrict access to data, and the ability to configure and apply corporate policies. Think of that in terms of, how things are loaded, who sees what, and what credentials they have to have in order to see content within various applications that are there. And then the ability to use a product called Microsoft Intune to manage iOS devices, Android phones, and Windows 10 and 11 PCs. So this really gives you the ability to support your workforce by having them be able to bring their own devices or BYOD into the environment corporately. And then when those employees leave, you have the ability to, select, wipe, and take corporate content off those personally owned devices, and still not harming any of the personal content on those devices. The little table that you see there on the slide before you on the right-hand side just kind of helps illustrate at a very high level the additional features that you get with Microsoft 365 versus Office 365. The flavors of the productivity apps, Word, Excel, are going to be exactly the same. There's no functional difference between the two. It's just that you get a much better, stronger security posture with the Microsoft 365 out of the box without any a la carte add-ons.
Got it. That makes buying things a little bit easier too, not having to know which ones you need to depend on, which
Yeah,
SKUs
exactly.
are dependent on the others.
Right.
So got it. Okay, that makes sense. Great. Gonna kind of throw this one in on you. We've talked a lot about EAs in the past, and I know quite a few of our clients in the past have had EAs. I know there's been some big changes over the last year with Microsoft. So I'll let you kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, so enterprise agreements or EAs have been around for a long time. And in the old days, think of it in the 2016 time frame. Before that, Microsoft had a pretty low seat count, about 250 seats. So if you had 250 seats or more, you would be eligible to get on a enterprise agreement. And then back around 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, Microsoft doubled that and made it up to 500. So you had to have a minimum of 500 licensed seats in order to get into an enterprise agreement. And it's been that way for a number of years. And then last year, Microsoft changed it, and they actually changed it from 500 to 2,500 or more users or devices to go into an enterprise agreement. And the reason that they did that is to drive more traffic and more purchasing options along the CSP and the NCE purchasing areas rather than the enterprise agreements. So this is because there's so many SMB, small to mid-market businesses that have a need for that and that are growing, and still needed that license mobility and the user mobility to be able to transact a little bit better than some of the restrictions that are typically in place for an enterprise agreement. So you're going to still see that in place with the EAs, but the seat count obviously is much, much higher at 2,500. Then there's also some different types of enrollment on those enterprise agreements. The purpose of today's session really isn't to get too far into the weeds on this, but the enterprise enrollment is per user, per device, and does have some hybrid licensing options. And you can also have a long-term commitment within the enterprise platform for CALs, client access licenses, Windows Enterprise licensing, and then software assurance on a per user basis. The server and the cloud enrollment piece is really cloud optimized licensing solutions, and a commitment to full software assurance, or SA as it's called, coverage is required in one or more of the components. And then the little table there below shows you the 4 different components that are part of the enterprise agreement. So we can still help you answer questions and figure out which is helpful for you for the most part, but by and large, I think the NCE and the CSP is for the most part the best tool for most of our audience.
Yeah, and I know that we've had several clients that were on EAs that no longer qualified
Right.
and kind of looking for our advice to help them with their licensing. And so definitely as Microsoft's making these changes, we're able to help.
Yeah, I mean that's a great reason to reach out to Velosio and have a conversation with myself and others to transition you from these EAs into CSP and NCEs and that hybrid solution that you spoke a moment or two ago, Amy.
Yep. Okay, next one, right sizing. And I know we work with a lot of clients with a lot of different licensing that might have just started purchasing, especially during COVID, and they've really not taken a look at their licensing. They just keep paying the bill. So,
Well,
you
not
know,
only that, but I think a lot of times, particularly to your point, during the COVID pandemic, people would go to Microsoft Direct and they would see a need for an add-on, and so they would purchase something, and they might add Microsoft Intune, or they'd add this, that, or the other, and which is fine. But the problem is that when you start doing that and you keep on going along that type of path, you end up with an awful lot of sprawl, as we refer to it. So you've got a lot of different licenses that are delivering the functionality that you're trying to achieve, but it may not be the best way to do it, and particularly it may not be the most economical. And so by having Velocity take part in these conversations with you, we take a look at your existing licensing posture and then find out if that makes sense or if there's opportunities for savings by consolidating some of the licenses to a different Microsoft or Office 365 plan, where some of those a la carte offerings are incorporated natively into that license by plan. So this slide here really shows a couple of common examples that we see here: dual functionality as it relates to Power BI. Many times we see a la carte add-on licensing of Power BI. Um, Most often you see that with other people that have an E5, for example, and the E5 license includes Power BI by default. So if you have an a la carte license in that example, you actually are overpaying because you're double licensed for the same product. Same thing goes for Microsoft Intune and Defender for Office 365. Defender is really a much broader product. The only version we're talking about here is the small flavor for Office 365, which is bundled together in M365 Business Premium and, of course, the E5. And then, of course, the E5 security and E5 compliance are included in the E5 plans as well. But sometimes we see people with an a la carte license as an add-on of that as well, which means you're just overpaying for the identical functionality. So we here at Velosio can help analyze that licensing posture and then make recommendations to hopefully reduce your licensing expenditure on a monthly basis.
awesome. And I know we've done that with quite a few clients, and taking a look at
Right.
licensing, seeing some of just these things.
Yeah.
You've got some links up here that are really helpful.
Yeah. So on the next slide, we have the links that talk about the different resources that you can go to. So you can get those resources and click on those links and get additional information, or have Velosio, answer any questions for you whenever you have them.
Perfect. And the last thing I'm going to let you chat about before I get to Volley is kind of why Velosio for licensing. Because you get to work with Bert and he gets to take a look at, the licensing and consolidate and right size. But there's a lot of different advantages to that.
Yeah, there's many different, values to it here. And we talked briefly about having the ability to have the licenses resized, but it's also a great benefit because you get to deal with a single vendor, a vendor that understands your licensing, a vendor that has the ability to provide support in Microsoft and Office 365, as well as a wide variety of other ERP products as well. So you're looking at a long-term partner to help you in your endeavors, rather than a fragmented approach where you talk to one person for licensing and then go to another company for support and then another company to understand the details and the special projects. With Velocity, you can come to us as a single solution for all those criteria and for all those areas that you need help with.
Awesome. And that's one thing to really highlight is that we do provide that first level of support for Office or for M365 or Office O365.
Right.
I think there's always been kind of a little bit of confusion with that, but we are your support partner, and that's included at no charge.
Good.
So, okay, this is a great segue into one of my favorite topics over the course of the last year since rolling this out. So, it's called the Velosio One Licensing Incentive. So, Volley. What is Volley? So, it's really taking a look at all the subscriptions you have, Dynamics, D365, Office, Azure workloads, if you're using Velosio managed services, and our application support. So if you start looking at combining those with Velosio, we're actually have rolled out a program where based on the tier, and I'm going to go through some scenarios here in a second, but based on that tier, we're going to actually give you a percentage of what you're spending in licensing with us back each month. So as you pay that bill or spend that money, that amount in licensing, that percentage, we're going to apply to your consulting invoices each month. So, like I said, I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of different scenarios, but it's been a great addition and a great program. We kind of rolled it out in beta for a couple of months last year, and then now we've taken this to market. So it's as you've maybe got your licenses partly with Microsoft, you've got maybe something with another partner, and you want to look at consolidating those all into one. Well, this is one way to do it and receive some of those benefits. So I'm going to take you through a couple of scenarios. So the big one is, and I'll kind of go through the calculator. So Acme Company currently purchases their software subscriptions for Microsoft D365 Business Central through Velosio. They're with us. They have Office 365 with another partner, and they're looking to move those over to Velosio. They're also looking at a client success subscription support agreement. And if you don't know what that is, it's in addition to the application support, T&M, we've got unlimited support. We now have subscription services. So subscription services is a minimum of 10 hours a month that you commit to, and you can pay for those 10 hours at a reduced rate. So that's our subscription services offering. So with this scenario, I'm going to pull up this little calculator over here. I'm going to move this over for you. And we were looking at, they were going to spend $4,200 in D365 licensing with us. They have $34,000 of Office licensing with someone else. Oops, I just put that in the wrong one. Sorry. 34,320. And they're looking at possibly adding a subscription support plan. So right now they're spending $72,000 a year. This is their annual cost. So we divide that by 12 to get the monthly. But they would be getting, before we added their subscription services, about $3,600 back in incentives to be applied towards any new consulting services they wanted to do. So if they were looking at a Power BI project or, adding functionality to BC or looking at some reporting services, they could apply these funds towards that. So let's say they go ahead and add that subscription services. What it doesn't do is add towards the commit. It adds towards your commit. It adds towards a tier. So they'd be getting $4,300 back. Now, what's also great about this is if you purchase a success agreement at the time you sign up for Volley, you can actually pay for your subscription services with some of your Volley incentive dollars. So you don't have to, if you didn't have a project right now, but you were using subscription support, you could apply that money towards there. So let's move this back over here. I'm going to go through kind of the second scenario. So second scenario is Acme Company currently is considering moving from Dynamics GP to Business Central, and they're looking to take advantage of the Bridge to the Cloud offer. So Bridge to the Cloud offer 2.0 is now valid if you want to talk to a CAM about that. They're also looking at moving their Office licenses and their Azure workloads over to Velosio, so they can apply the incentive towards the migration. So what they're looking to do is say, okay, let me look at this dollars, and then I can actually apply these dollars. So I'm going to share my screen back over here again. Sorry to make you a little bit dizzy. And so they would be spending about 57,000 in D365 licenses. They've got 134,000 of Microsoft Office licenses, and they've got 12,000 in Azure. Now I'm going to remove subscription services because they're not going to do that. But they would receive around $13,000 that when they move to BC, they can actually apply those dollars towards the migration. So that's a great way for them to offset a little bit of the cost of the migration just by moving some licensing over. And everything's housed under one roof now. So you've got one partner looking at everything. Now I'm going to share a third scenario, and I've kind of done small, medium, large here. And this was actually a client that had an EA that was moving back. So they're a GP hosted client in Azure. They were purchasing all their Microsoft licenses directly from Microsoft, and they're looking at moving the following over to Velosio. So in this scenario, what they are looking to do, so they have, again, this is a large client. They don't have any D365 because they're on GP. So, but what they do have, is $695,000 worth of Office licenses that they have. So then they also have $158,000 in Azure spend. They've also taken advantage of managed services. So we can add that in there. And they've also got subscription services worth about $96,000 because they're spending about 40 hours a month with us. So in this scenario, by them consolidating all their licensing with Velosio, this is a $65,000 incentive that we're giving back to the client. So in order to qualify for Volley, you have to have at least 2 workloads moved over to Volley that qualify with D365 licenses, like I said, M365, Azure spend, managed services, and the subscription services. So this was a great rebate program for them to move over to Velosio. So kind of go through, those were the 3 different scenarios. So, and all the CAMs can chat with you about this. I'm more than happy. You might have me on the phone if you want to talk about Volley, because it's a program that's kind of near and dear to my heart, but it's been great for the clients. So talked about a little bit of the benefits. So earn Volley dollars on eligible subscriptions when purchasing new subscription workloads, D365, Office 365, M365, Azure, client success plans. Volley can be used for any new service projects, support plans, or new consulting engagements. You get that free review score annually that Bert talked about. We can kind of walk through, make sure your licensing's right sized. We've got premier support escalation, and we've got advisory services available. So, and then personal consultation. So might have Bert there with you. So, really talking about the licensing. Anything you could add on that one, Bert?
No, I think you pretty well mentioned it, covered every detail.
Okay. It's all on an annual commitment that falls under NCE payments through the hub, that kind of thing, if you've worked with hub. So kind of want to go back to a little bit of NCE. If you're looking at Volley, if you're looking at moving any licenses, this is if you're looking at moving licenses anywhere. From Microsoft to another big box to Velosio. I don't want to mention Velosio somewhere else, but pricing for one is the same across the board. So this is Microsoft set pricing. It's the same thing, whether you're buying through Microsoft, whether you're buying through Velosio, or buying through one of the other big boxes. So it's all the same. So that's why we kind of pulled out a little bit of the Volley program, as the incentive to kind of combine it all into one. One is if you're going to move licenses, you want to confirm, because a lot of companies automatically moved everybody to NCE based on Microsoft last year. So we had to do that. So you want to confirm your contract commitments with your current partner, with the new partner, that you're not on NCE and that you can move. because part of that annual commit is the partner you're with is committed to, if you've gone annual commit paid monthly, that partner is committed to pay your bill, even if you don't pay it and you
Yeah.
move
I'm,
partners.
I'm
So
glad
that's
you brought
a
that
big
up,
thing
Amy.
right there.
That's very important. Yeah.
So,
That's extremely important.
yep. So when you sign up for that annual commit, paid monthly, if something happens, then we're stuck, or the current partner's stuck with that bill.
Right.
So you'll want to do the review. You'll want to review licenses with your new partner for the NCE model. You'll want to make sure you pay any outstanding invoices. Make sure you understand the payment terms, the annual, monthly, annual commit, annual payment, premium, licenses, and so on. You'll want to purchase the new licenses with a new partner, and then you'll let the old partner know that you're going to shut those licenses off. And also just to think about any ISVs that need to be contacted if you're going to move any kind of licensing anywhere. I kind of threw some examples of just Expand IT and Insight Works out there. But those are just things to think about when having an NCE conversation if you're thinking about moving these, kind of, like I said, any which direction.
And we're happy to engage at any time and help them through
Yep.
some of that, right, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we have licensing conversations going on every day. So a lot of, we not only do Dynamics, but, all of the Microsoft, applications, all of the Dynamics applications. We are a full service Microsoft partner.